the professor got up in front of me and said, "What do you need to be in business?" And people said, "A plan, money, this." And they just said, "No, you need a customer. You went out and got a customer. You went out and got a customer. That's what you need."
Welcome to Clearing the Path with Will, the podcast where we dive into real stories behind entrepreneurs, where we started, the challenges we faced, and the lessons we've learned. Taking a deeper look into the journey, talking with other entrepreneurs who are out here making it happen. Having everything set in place was my biggest stepping stone.
Meeting one person can lead to many other things, Really don't be afraid to walk up and shake one person's hand.
Welcome back to Clearing the Path with Will and Gralin. I'm your co-host, Gralin. Last episode, we talked about entrepreneurship. This episode, we have Will's business advisor on. Will?
I'm going to talk a little bit about how me and George met. My partner was using him on some stuff and some other projects, and we kind of just hit it off. I was sitting in the room while they were talking, and I was telling George a little bit about my company and where I was with it, and it kind of went off from there. We scheduled a meeting, and he scheduled it for 4:30 in the morning. And
You're still running around on machines. There was no other. I did move it up a little early just for the hell of it, but you did come at 4:30. You were still working on out in the field, so you couldn't do it during the day, and I had some other stuff to do. So it was a test.
Yeah, he was testing me, but at that point, I was still running the machines and handling all of that, and we had to find a good time to meet. And 4:30 in the morning, I guess he wanted to test me.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask, what are the benefits of having a business advisor as an entrepreneur? What are the things people don't see that business advisors help with?
Well, I was with a Fortune 500 company for 20 years, but I've been in business the last 30 or so of one different. And about 10 years ago, I started not one to have the risk of a business, but start use some of my knowledge and experience from being in all sorts of different businesses. The first thing I start out with is with a potential client, and if we can't get past this first point, it never goes anywhere else, is you can't fix what you don't measure. As a consultant, I'm here to ask the right questions. All of them are going to have to do initially with numbers. And if you're not keeping track of your expenses and your revenue and where it's coming from, your cost of labor in terms of a percentage of your revenue, your cost of goods, if you're making a lot of stuff, if you're providing a service, it's mostly cost of labor. But if you're not tracking that, you can't fix things. And so I start there and kind of go from, okay, let's see what your numbers are now. You don't have any, we'll set them up. Everybody uses Jobber. You take your Jobber invoices that you had for the month, take your labor, subtract your invoices, all your credit cards of your guys running around, subtract your overhead, and that's your profit or your loss. It's there are all sorts of programs. You can do it on spreadsheets, doesn't matter. But if you don't measure it, you can't fix it.
Right. So I want to ask you also, when it comes to having a business advisor, I think a lot of people see a business advisor as a lot of different things. And you explain, what the main role of a business advisor is. But I think, a lot of people will say a business advisor is more of a decision maker, more of a decision helper.
It's not any. I don't make any decisions.
Right.
They do, but I ask the right questions.
Right. So you're more there in the assistance and, the knowledge to do it, more of making the decision.
He tells me all the time, he puts his 2 cents in, and he said it's up to me to do what I want with what he said.
it's his company along with his partners, and they have to decide, and they have to manage their cash and their finances, all the rest of it. So it's not my decision, but I can make some recommendations, and I do.
Yeah.
I've recently made a recommendation hearing about a scheduling meeting that Sherry, his admin person, and Will were going to have with one of the managers of the company who's older, not as old as me, but looks older than me. You'll see him later, James. They were having a meeting talking about we need to have a scheduling meeting every Friday. We're going to have Matt, one of the managers. We're going to have James come in, and we're having this meeting. And I said, why are you going to put them in a truck and have them drive an hour from wherever they held, sit down with a meeting? And he said, well, it's kind of about James, who won't use a tablet and wants to sit there. And I said, that ain't going to work. We're going to buy James a tablet, train him how to use it, and we're going to do scheduling the right way. I'm talking to you. We got this, looking at a good screen. Virtual. So it's those kind of things that consultants get to see from afar and recommend changes.
Talking about James, that meeting that we set up when I had 2 or 3 guys, and we went and ate at that restaurant in Zebulon, and well, me and George were the only ones that showed up on time, and he was telling me that's all he needed to know. And when they did finally show up, he got up and just left. He said, this meeting is over. And I didn't know George that good at the time, and I was like, daggone.
Well, that's
me up more.
That was another thing where somebody can look at it. These were basically friends of yours. You let them do all sorts of things you would never let an employee do. And this young man over here, James, kept saying, you need to hire some professional people and pay them the right amount of money. And you were kind of, well, I can get these guys for $6 less. But they were 2 hours late. I mean, so I just reinforced what James said. You immediately, well, they kept leaving. One week, one's gone, and all of a sudden we're doing Indeed, we're finding people, and made a difference. But James is the one that told you first.
Yeah, James.
I just reinforced it.
He kept saying it, and then it was a terrible time because it was my buddies and heck, my brother-in-law. And it was definitely one of the hardest things I had to get over, was figuring out what to say and how to handle getting rid of that.
Exactly.
And you and James helped me out so much with that. And
well, we're over it now, and you've got professional people, and you pay them well, and things, they show up on time, and you can't even start to run a business if your employees aren't showing up on time.
And then once we got, a couple of good employees, he helped me make the decision that I needed to hire Sherry, my office admin. And that opened up the doors to so much more.
Well, allowed you to go out and sell more. And that's why your company's almost at $1 million last year in its first real year. Made money, which is amazing. Although you lost money last month. We're going to have our profit and loss meeting. We're going to spend a whole day in a car on Friday and talking about his profit and loss statement, whether he likes it or not.
Yeah.
But that's business. I mean, it was bad. Wintertime came. I mean, it snowed in Raleigh for the first time in 3 years.
The ground would freeze and then thaw out. It'd be a mess. It'd freeze, thaw out. How did that affect you much, Gralin?
It did. It affected some of our installs, especially when we're planting new plants. The ground's frozen, and we've got a shovel trying to dig through it. That does make a big difference. But I am glad that we're moving into the spring, and we don't have that issue anymore.
I feel like we should tell Gralin, like, having the right systems early will help us as we get more employees, hire more people, and grow. You want to hit on that?
Well, I mean, we've been doing this about 8 months, 7 months, something like that. and I spend as much time as you need in meetings, working through, trying to figure out how do we get the top line going, even though we're behind our budget. We're the first 2 months of the year, we're still ahead of what we did last year on average. So sales continue to grow. Expenses we have to manage, and we're going to talk about that. I mean, the equipment rental is maintaining itself. Equipment repairs are crazy expensive. We need to figure out why. So, but it's all driven off the P&L, because I'm looking at, with you, here's our revenue, here's all of our costs, and then really percentages.
Mm-hmm.
Our cost of labor should be more like 30. It's closer to 40, but overtime, we've got a lot of overtime. How do you manage the overtime? All those things, I'm just asking questions,
Yeah.
and hopefully help you come up with the right answer, and then you decide
What to do.
Well, that's what, you and your partner own the company, and that's what you're doing every day. We're doing a whole lot of things to grow the top line, and manage the bottom line. That's
Right.
what you'll be doing that the rest of your life. The top line comes from your efforts, handing business cards to everybody you run into, giving them all kind of swag, having free things, getting on the social media, doing a lot of things.
You don't
And-
like all the swag.
I don't like what it costs.
Yeah.
I like social media. I love it, or I wouldn't be doing it here. But I'm doing some old-timey marketing. I ran a company for a while. It was a direct marketing company, and we did 1 billion pieces of direct mail for our clients. We also had telemarketing centers. And we did send out a letter to some likely prospects, but we recently took little things like this, put your name on the side, and sent it out to 151 companies.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put it over here so you can play with it while we're having it. Because the first time I introduced the idea to you, you wouldn't put it down.
No. I was
So-
sitting here fidgeting with it while you were telling me
Yeah.
about direct mail.
And we're hoping that those 151 people put one of these little things on their desk with your name on the side of it. And they say, oh yeah, let me call him.
Yep. Exactly.
So that's the old timey marketing. And then we're going to do some stuff in the summer. Hopefully have you join the General Contractors Association, go to a convention in the summer and
Yeah.
have a booth and
Play some golf.
play some golf, have some fun, and meet a lot of people that need your services. And so that's the next big marketing effort. We're going to send out a bunch more of these things to another 100 or so people east of us.
I'm trying to bring you up to speed on social media and doing this podcast and
All I want to know, I want to.
lives.
I got there's like 7 people around here. They know more about social media than I do, but I know how to look at the analytics.
Yeah.
And that's the offer I can make, and also be on a podcast and talk about how much fun it is to work with you.
Yeah.
George, I wanted to ask you, in your opinion and in your line of work, what you do, what would your advice be for somebody that wants to start a company, other than the materials directly in that line of work, stuff like
Young entrepreneurs.
right, like maybe how to get a finance, how to get a business plan, and stuff like that.
Well, I'll tell you a story. I was 20 years with the Pitney Bowes Company, Fortune 500 company. I was VP of marketing, but I always wanted to be in business for myself. And so I had decided I was going to become a precision tune area franchisor in Connecticut. And so I lived there, and I went into the city in Manhattan and took a course at the New School about entrepreneurship. And the professor got up in front of me and said, what do you need to be in business? And people said, a plan, money, this. And they just said, no, you need a customer. You went out and got a customer. You went out and got a customer. That's what you need. Do you need a lot of other things later? You need equipment, you need financing, you need some help, you need some advice. A business plan helps, but you guys knew in your head what you wanted to do. So I don't know how much a business plan would have helped you start the business, but what you need is a customer.
Right. So I think a lot of people come from you need a business plan, and I see exactly what you mean from you need a customer, because none of it is possible without the customer saying, hey, this is what I need you to do, and this is, you're offering your services, and this is what I need done. You can do this, and then from there you go and you go and you go, and you just build, build, build. So I think, start from a customer, have one instead of having a business plan, because the business plan is not going to do anything for you. More as a customer and actually being there and doing the job is going to do something for you.
Well, a business plan is like what Mike Tyson said. He said, I've got a plan until somebody hits me.
Right.
And in the first, you open up a business, if you got a customer in your head, you say, okay, I want to do landscaping. I want to move dirt. If you've got that as your plan in your head, you get a customer, and then you start saying, well, what kind of customers do I want? Well, you found out you really didn't want individual homeowner customers. You wanted big contract customers.
Right.
So now you can start to put together a plan. How am I going to get the top line? How am I going to manage those bottom lines?
Right. So, so what I would say on that, just my opinion is establish your customer, your base, and then once you get to a certain point, like for me, it was once I learned I don't want to do maintenance for residential customers. I want to target all of my maintenance towards commercial companies, property maintenance and stuff like that. So now that I know that's who I want to look for, I can go out and do something like the direct mailing, like you
Right.
did with the toys and stuff like that. Now that I have 100% knowledge of who I'm directing all of my business to.
Finding your niche.
Right. Finding a new niche or something like that, instead of running all over trying to find residentials that don't pay, complain. And it's just way too much, where we can get 10 or 12 neighborhoods that pay 4 or 5 times as much, and I'll hear one email once a month. It's so much better.
Residential, they'll put you in a lawsuit over bushes.
Yep.
Expensive consultants won't call it a niche. They'll call it your USP, your unique selling proposition. And Will's, I know well, it took a while for me to understand it, because it was, I'm going to do anything for anybody. I'm going to do it well. And I'm full service. I'm doing jobs other people won't do. He figured out how to list your landscaping company, put it together with all of his things he can do, and go out and take smaller jobs that bigger companies won't do.
Right.
That's his niche. His niche will change over time, but right now that's where we're trying. We're contacting all the people that have the resources to do it themselves. They just don't want to go out and do a $50,000 job. To us, $50,000 is a nice sized job. Well, the one thing that I did learn after working with you just probably a week or two is that you know how to sell, you know how to get a customer, you know how to, and you don't, whatever you promise, you deliver. That's the hardest thing to do. Doing all the stuff that I do, asking questions, let's talk about this, that's the easy part. And both you guys have figured out how to do that. You can hire people to take care of all the other things, but building your business and trust with customers, you guys know. Yeah, nobody's going to do it as well as you do it.
What George plays a role in your company, and what the good is, and like I said, a lot of people can see it as a whole bunch of different things, and they might not see it. They might see it, oh, it's expensive, but I feel like George has done 10 times more than, what anybody can see. And he's made you 10 times more money than you've spent on his services, helping you out. And I think it's a really good thing to have somebody like that. And especially with George having, he's being older, and, like your project manager as well, you have so many other people giving you advice that's been around so much longer and that knows a lot more. It's really valuable to a young mind.
Yeah.
And for people out there that are thinking about it, I mean, there's a lot of ways to get advice and not have to pay for it. Your uncle who was in the business, I have found in selling office equipment back many, many years ago, when I would talk to a business owner, that's what he wants to talk about, how he got in business. finding advice from friends, relatives. People want to help people get ahead and start things. So there's advice. You don't have to pay for it. Will is fortunate that has some resources that many companies his size don't have, but he takes advantage of those resources. And so there's probably other than asking questions, I always think about a saying. I'm not sure where it came from. It wasn't from me, but it is doing. Efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things. And I can see all sorts of examples of how, you did that right, but was that the right thing we needed to be doing?